Today I'll be showing you how to make this retro mod cane from polymer clay and transform it into stunning one-of-a-kind earrings. They're bold, lightweight, and totally unique. I can't wait to dive in, so let's get started with materials. The first thing we're going to need is our polymer clay. We'll be using peacock, pearl, purple, and fuchsia. You'll also need a tissue blade, a ripple blade, a ruler, and an extruder with a 1/2 centimeter square insert. An acrylic rod is essential, but an acrylic rod with a handle can be especially helpful when compressing the cane. For clay cutters, I'll be using my 1 1/4 inch mandorla cutter, as well as my 3/4 inch round pear clay cutter, both of which are available on my website if you'd like to get a pair of your own. Next, you'll need 18 gauge craft wire. I'll be using bare copper wire, but you can use any wire you prefer. For wire work, you'll want a steel block for flattening, a chasing hammer, chain nose or flat nose pliers, bail making pliers, and a flush cutter. You'll also need ear wires, any style of your choice. Some other helpful materials include a ceramic tile to work on, deli paper, a pasta machine, and an oven to cure your jewelry. Now that we have everything ready, let's clear our workspace and start mixing colors for our mod cane. The color palette we will be using includes peacock and purple, which are factory Sculpey colors. For the remaining colors in our palette, I'll put the recipes on the screen for you. When mixing colors, I use a 3/4 inch circle clay cutter and roll my clay sheets to a number 2 setting on my Atlas 180 pasta machine, which is the 3rd thickest setting. I found that each circle cut this way weighs about 1 gram of clay. For this tutorial, you'll be using anywhere between 10 to 11 grams of clay per color. This quick tip should help you measure out the right amount for the next steps. With our colors mixed, I've rolled the clay to a number 3 thickness, which is the 4th thickest setting on my pasta machine. I found that my 3/4 inch circle clay cutter pretty closely matches the diameter of my extruder. I'll have to do some reduction, but this gets me pretty close. The next step is taking our round clay cutter and cutting out some circles in our clay sheets. Now that we have our surface cleaned and ready for the next steps, I'm going to take a steel ruler and measure the internal depth of my Makin's clay extruder. It comes out to about 4.5 inches. With this dimension in mind, I'm going to stack my clay discs to about 3 inches high. This will give me room in the tube for the additional length that the stack will gain as it decreases in diameter during the reduction process. The stacking process is completely random. There's no strict pattern or precise order. It's a very organic process, so just stack the pieces in a way that feels right to you. That's the beauty of this cane. It allows for creativity and spontaneity. Now I'm going to reduce the diameter of this clay until it fits into the extruder. As you roll, angle your hand. This will help prevent your knuckles from making unwanted indents in the clay. After reducing, the length of my clay is just about 4 1/4 inches long. Now I'm going to go ahead and insert my clay into the extruder. The clay may be a little sticky at this point because it's nice and warm, but that's what we want. With our clay loaded, we can take our 1/2 centimeter square insert and attach it to our extruder. Once we have this installed, we're ready for the fun part. With a firm grip on the knurled section of your extruder, begin screwing in the handle. You may hear some squeaking sounds, but that's completely normal. If you experience any hand fatigue, try holding the extruder body with a soft cloth or something to create a barrier between your skin and the metal. Continue extruding until all clay has exited the extruder. Okay, so here's our piece all extruded. I'm going to fold our piece in half and cut off the ugly ends from the extruder. And this is how it looks. Already looks pretty cool to me. With our piece still folded in half, take your tissue blade and cut at the center of the fold. Now let's align the two pieces together so we can take a measurement. Our clay is about 10.5 inches, and we want to cut it in half again. With our clay cut, place one of the cut segments next to the other cut segment so that 4 square strips are lined up next to one another. Now we're going to take that segment and cut it in half again. This time, stack one segment on top of the other half and take another measurement. Now we're going to cut our clay in half one last time. Let's put the two cut segments together and we should have a cane shaped like a square. We can use our acrylic roller with a handle to help compress all of the extruded clay pieces together and form one universal cane. Roll each side and turn the cane as you go until you see that the cane looks all joined together. Our mod cane is looking pretty cool, but before moving on, I'm going to let this cane completely cool down. The next step in our process is to take our 18 gauge wire and cut 4 pieces, each measuring 8.5 centimeters, just under 3.5 inches long. With our wire cut, we're going to focus on the 2 wires that will be embedded into our drop shape made with the mandorla cutter. To position them correctly, I'm laying the wire lengthwise across the cutter and marking where it will be embedded into the clay. I'll repeat this with the second wire. Next, I'll take the 2 wires that will pass through the pear cutter and mark the center points. This will keep everything aligned. Using the pear cutter as a reference, mark the intersecting points on the wire. Be sure to position the center point mark as close to the center of the pear as possible. With my bail making pliers in hand, I'm going to take one of the wires that will be embedded into the drop and make small bends along the wire. I like to use the smallest diameter in my pliers for this. Be sure to stop at the marked point. Let's check the fit by placing it back against the cutter. This ensures the wire is positioned securely and adds structural integrity when embedded into the clay. I'll repeat this process for the second wire. Once embedded, this wire isn't going anywhere. Next, I'll work on the pass-through wires. I'll start by making a bend at the center mark, then add small bends along the marked section. The goal is to ensure the two straight sides remain aligned after bending. I'll repeat the same process for the second wire. Now, placing them alongside the cutter, you can see how they fit. These wires will stay securely in place once embedded and cured. Finally, I'll use my steel block and chasing hammer to flatten and work harden the wire. This step helps with the embedding process. I'll do this off screen and bring you back once it's finished. This is one of the drop wires after hammering, and as you can see, it has a nice flat finish. And here is one of the wires that will be embedded into the pair after it has been hammered. I mixed up this custom color to use as both the backer and a contrasting shade against the pattern. It's a blend of 14 parts pearl to 1 part fuchsia. I doubled the recipe to make sure I had plenty to work with. Our cane has now had time to rest, so let's give it a quick cleanup cut before I show you the final look. It is much easier to slice now that it's rested. Here's the cleaned up version of the cane. I love how the colors turned out. Now I'm going to slice some pieces from our cane that are about 2 millimeters thick. I'll carefully cut down, taking my time to keep them as even as possible. I'll take these slices and gently press them together before giving them a light roll. Now that they're joined, I'll run the sheet through the pasta machine at a number 2 setting, then down to a number 3. The longest side will go against my rollers first. This is the sliced piece of the mod cane after being rolled out to a number 3 setting on my atlas, which is the 4th thickest setting. Next, I took a piece of light pink clay and rolled it to the same number 3 thickness, making sure it matched the width of my cane slices. With my ripple blade, I'm going to make a cut into the mod cane. The result is such a cool effect. A quick tip: hold on to the deli paper as you pull away the ripple blade from your clay. It makes the removal process much easier. Next, I'll do the same with the pink clay, creating the same wavy pattern. Now comes the fun part: carefully lining up the ripples between the two pieces. It might take a couple of tries to get them aligned just right, but the visual impact of this technique is totally worth it. At this point, I haven't done any burnishing yet, but here's how they look so far. To seamlessly join them, I'll place a deli sheet over the surface and use my finger to burnish everything together. A nice, thorough burnishing will help smooth out the seams. Now our piece is nice and smooth. You can't feel any seams between the clay layers. With that set aside, we will prepare the pink clay backing by rolling it through the pasta machine onto a setting number 2. Now that our backer clay is at the proper thickness, we're going to carefully place it onto a smaller ceramic tile, making sure to lay it down smoothly to avoid trapping any air bubbles between the clay and the surface. Using my 1¼ mandorla cutter, I'm going to make 2 small marks into the clay without cutting all the way through. Then I'll take my copper wire and place it into the clay, pressing it gently into the backer so it sits flush with the surface. I'll do this for both pieces. See how it's embedded into the clay? Now I'll carefully lift the wires and set it aside. Next, I'll take my cutter, align it with the marks, and make my cuts. Press down, do a little wiggle, and lift. Remove the excess clay and set it aside for later. Using liquid clay and a paintbrush, we're going to lightly coat the copper wire. Once coated, I'll place the wire back into the marks we made earlier. I'll go ahead and do this for the second piece as well. Setting those aside, I'll grab our mod cane sheet and my cutter again. I'm choosing a section of the pattern that visually interests me the most. Personally, I love a diagonal design, so I'll mirror my two pieces. Peel the excess clay from the deli sheet and separate it for later. Using my tissue blade, I'll carefully lift the cut pieces from the deli paper and place them onto the backer clay. I found that holding these pieces like a taco and lining the points of the shape first with the backer clay gave me the best results. Once the pieces are in position, gently press everything together to ensure a strong bond. Repeat this with the second drop. Take a moment to inspect your piece and use your fingers to press the clay firmly around the wire for secure embedding. Next, I'm going to repeat this same embedding process with the pear-shaped clay component for our earrings. I'll bring you back when they're ready to cure. Now that our earring components are ready for curing, I've placed them into a brownie pan directly on the ceramic tiles and covered them with a sheet of aluminum foil. Since I'm using Sculpey Primo, I'll be baking them at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 60 minutes. As you can see, I like to keep ceramic tiles both inside my oven and on top of it to help regulate temperature and prevent heat spikes. Just a little tip for more consistent baking. Our pieces are now cured, and I wanted to show you how they turned out. The next step in the process is sanding the sides of the components. I like to use wet-dry sandpaper and sand my pieces wet, adding a small amount of dish soap to the water for lubrication. I start with 250 grit and gradually work my way up through 400, 600, 800, 1000, and finally 1500 grit for a beautifully smooth surface. I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera and apply a coating of resin to the pieces, and I'll bring you back for the final assembly. Gather your chain nose pliers, flush cutters, bail making pliers, ear wires, and a ruler. This is one of the drops after it's been resined. After sanding, I gave the edges a quick polishing with some Renaissance wax. I did end up resining both the front and back just because I really like how that looks. The barrels on my pliers are 2.5, 3, 5, 5.5, 7, and 9 millimeters in diameter. We will be using the smallest 2.5 millimeter diameter for our earrings today, but before we get into that process, we need to trim our wires. I'm going to carefully bend the wire at an angle toward the front face of the earring, just like this. Then I'm going to take my ruler and measure out about 1.1 centimeters and make a flush cut. Using my bail making pliers, I'll position the wire so that I can't feel the wire coming out of the other side of the plier. Then I'll loop the wire around the smallest diameter, adjusting my grip around the pliers as necessary. And there you have it, a simple loop. Now go ahead and repeat the same process on the second drop, and I'll meet you back for the pear-shaped component. For the pear-shaped component, we're going to push it to the side of the earring rather than the front, because we want it to interlock with the drop. Now let's make our cut and form the simple loop. The ear wire design you have chosen for your earrings will define the loop direction on the top of the pear component. Because my ear wire has a loop that faces forward, I need to make a loop that bends toward the back of my earring, similar to the loop we made for the drop component. With our loops made, we can finally assemble the earrings. Go ahead and open the simple loop in the drop component by twisting to open. Never pull your loops apart. Once the loop is open, slide the pear-shaped component onto the loop and twist to close. Go ahead and do the same for the second earring. To connect the ear wire, open the simple loop on top of the pear and slide the ear wire into place. Let me know in the comments below if you would like me to show you how I made these ear wires in another video. Go ahead and repeat for the second earring. What do you think of these earrings? Aren't they stunning? Thank you so much for spending some of your day with me and watching this tutorial until the end. If you would like to purchase any of the cutters I used in this tutorial, I shared the links in the description box below. Thank you again, and until next time, happy jewelry making!